So now that I've started the record button, again, my name is Noah Newman. I am the CoCoRaHS Education Coordinator, and welcome to the Teacher Training Webinar for CoCoRaHS for Schools. CoCoRaHS is actually a citizen science network, and we're nonprofit, we are grassroots, we are located in all 50 states, and we've got volunteers of all ages and backgrounds. And what we do is we measure precipitation, and precipitation only. No temperature or other types of weather phenomenon, strictly precipitation, rain, hail, and snow. So you can see here that once trained, our volunteers use these measuring tools, and everyone here in this webinar is going to receive a rain gauge for your school. At the end, I'll give you instructions to email me your address, and we'll make sure to get you your rain gauge. We also use, and I'll go into this a little bit later here, but we use styrofoam covered with aluminum foil to measure hail, and I'll briefly talk about snow as well. So as far as reporting goes, I'm going to, of course, get into this as well, but it's very easy to report your data. It takes just a couple of minutes a day, usually actually only about 10 seconds, especially if it didn't rain at all. You can submit your 0 and help out the scientists by telling them where it did not rain. But once you report your data, it is instantly available to view, either on a map locally. You can look at the whole nation. You can look at just an entire state. You can also look at the data in list format. And we have new features coming where you'll actually be able to graph the data in a pretty cool way. So CoCoRaHS started in 1997. Actually, it was the flood of Fort Collins that prompted to start CoCoRaHS, which actually started a year later in 1998. But the Fort Collins flood, long story short, the official weather station for Fort Collins was located actually right here, and they recorded a little over 2 inches of rain. But that night, where all the rain fell was where a weather station was not, and they got 14.5 inches of rain just about 5 miles away from where the official weather station was. And so this really pointed out the fact that rainfall can be different from just block to block, and in this matter we were talking inches of difference from block to block. And this flood created a whole lot of havoc, and $200 million in damages, and 5 people died. And so a year later we decided, well, throughout the next year we decided to start a network of people with rain gauges to help out scientists better determine the variation of rainfall. And so what started as just a community project in Fort Collins, Colorado, quickly grew. And over the last 14 years, we are now a nationwide database. We actually have started to go international with reports coming in from Manitoba in Canada, and soon is Mexico, and we've got many other countries knocking on our door. Very briefly, here is a quick list of just some of the people that use our data. And on a daily or basically even a weekly basis, we'll get a new email from someone else. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we've been contacted by NASA, who wants to start using our data to compare to ground truth their satellite data. So that's really exciting, and your students can get involved with helping out NASA scientists as well. So first I'm going to discuss the placement of your gauge. This is a really big question for teachers. There are a lot of concerns about where can I put my gauge. And really the bottom line, as this says, is just do your best. Nobody has an ideal location, just about nobody. This is a pretty nice ideal location here. But with a school, we've got buildings, we've got trees, and the point is to just do your best. The place to not put your gauge is to leave it in the box. If you can get the gauge out of the box and outside to where it can actually see the sky, you are doing something right. So get it out of the box and get it outside, and of course we want to keep it away from sprinklers, or in this case some meddling kids, but you get the point. We want it outside, and just do your best. Here are a couple of quick examples. This post costs about $3 at Home Depot, so you could attach a piece of wood to that post, and then the rain gauge just attaches right to that. So very cheap and easy. We've had teachers that are using Christmas tree holders. So here you can see we've got a Christmas tree holder holding the gauge upright and level. So here the only issue would be a sprinkler system. Finally, here's just a nice, easy way to even make a portable gauge stand. It's maybe hard to see here. Let's see if I can potentially use a pen and kind of draw like maybe an overhead view. So if this is your post here, you can have 4 pieces of wood sticking out like this, like this, like this, and like this. And that's what we've got right here. There's 4 pieces of wood stabilizing. This is an overhead view, and so the rain gauge could just get attached to the piece of wood sticking up here. So let me turn off my drawing tool here and go on to the next slide. So signing up for CoCoRaHS. I'm not sure if the teachers on this webinar have already signed up your school. If you've signed up your school already, go ahead and raise your hand. If you could use your control panel and raise your hand over on the right-hand side, you should see a little hand. We've got a couple of latecomers to the webinar who didn't get to practice earlier, but okay, I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand, so I'm assuming you have not registered your school yet. So to register your school, we've got some easy but specific instructions here. If you go to CoCoRaHS.org and click on Join CoCoRaHS in the upper right-hand corner, the main thing I want to point out for teachers is to not use your own name. Do not use John Smith. What I want you to use is your school name here. So for example, if your school is Liberty Elementary School, first name Liberty, last name Elementary School. As long as we get the word school somewhere in here, we'll be able to track and follow all the schools that are involved with CoCoRaHS. I would like you to use your teacher email address as the contact info. And when it comes to the station address, which can be the same as the postal address, we want you to use the physical address of the school. That way we can find the latitude and longitude and properly map your data on the map. So don't worry about providing lat and long. There's further down on this sign-up page to provide lat long coordinates, but don't worry about that. We'll figure it out for you. Just type in the address of the school and make sure you have your teacher email address in there. Great. So now we're going to talk about reading your gauge, how to read your gauge. This is, it's very easy, but it's also a little confusing, so I just want to make sure everyone has this, understands the pieces of the rain gauge. So there are 3 main pieces to the rain gauge. You've got the funnel, and you've got the inner measuring tube, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second here. But the outer tube, you can take off the funnel and the inner tube, you can take those out and just have the outer tube by itself. And that could be used to measure rainfall. In fact, you could let the rain fall into here, and in theory you could just stick a ruler straight into the rain gauge here and measure in inches how much rain you got. But we want to be accurate, and that's why we have this inner tube that exaggerates and allows for accuracy, and I'll explain that in just a second. So basically what it is there's a mathematical calibration here between the funnel, the top of the rain gauge, and the inner tube, and it's a 10-to-1 scale. So basically it gets funneled into this inner tube and gets exaggerated 10 times its size. So here is a great example. This is the outer tube all by itself, and I've poured exactly 1 inch of rain of water that is representing rainfall in this gauge here. You can see if you stuck a ruler next to this, it'd be right at 1 inch. But if I pour it into the inner tube, it fills it all the way to the top. And when you see your inner tube, when you get your rain gauge, you'll see that it says 1.00. And there's 100 little tiny tick marks up and down this whole thing. And so this splits it up into 1/100th of an inch. So here is where we can get involved with math. When I do school visits and talk to students, we can start saying, well, if 1 inch fills it up to the 1.00 here, how much would a half an inch fill it up to? And the kids instantly know that it would be 50. Well, what about 3/4 of an inch? Well, that would be at 75. And so math is involved. You can get into fractions, tenths of an inch. It meets the state standards when we're talking about learning about math. So another way that CoCoRaHS can be used in your classroom. So the most common measurement, and let me briefly back up and say that participating in CoCoRaHS is completely voluntary. So we do not make you report every single day. You, as a school, as a teacher, we certainly understand that you're busy and don't have the time to do this throughout the entire year. So by all means, if you do this just during your weather unit, that's great. But if you can get in the habit of reporting every day, it only takes just a couple of seconds, and it really helps out scientists. So obviously, living in Colorado, our most common observation is 0. It's really important, though, for scientists to know where it rained and really where it did not rain. I'm going to actually pause the show for a moment and go to the CoCoRaHS website, where we can see this morning we've already had over 6,300 people report their data for the day. And you can see on the map all these little gray dots here. These are zeros. These are people who have reported 0 for the day. And it really helps when you're looking at this perspective. We don't live in Chicago. Did it rain or did it not rain? Well, now you know for sure. It did not rain. We've got zeros everywhere. So it really helps out scientists to report zeros as well. Back to the slideshow here. The next most popular report is called trace, or capital letter T is what you would enter in your data sheet. And this is if you experienced rain, but by the next morning when you take your measurement, our measurements happen in the first thing in the morning, it's dry in there, well, you know it rained. But there's not enough to measure. Sometimes it's even below the very first little notch here of 0.01. So you would want to report a T for trace. Another important factor to keep in mind, of course, as teachers, you're probably well aware of the properties of water and surface tension. And when it comes to the inner tube, the water likes to kind of try to stick to the outer sides of the inner tube, and gravity pulls the bottom part down, and we call this the meniscus. And of course, we always want to measure from the bottom of the meniscus. Please do not round up. We want to be accurate as possible. This is a real science program. The data are used by real scientists, so please be as accurate as possible. When do we take our observations? Well, it's first thing in the morning. The standard is 7 a.m., but we understand with schools that's not necessarily feasible. We actually have expanded this window actually to 2.5 hours, so it could say actually 4:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. is okay to actually look at your gauge. Now, you can look at your gauge at 7 a.m., but still even report the data anytime throughout the day. So let's say your 4th period is maybe the class that reports the data. Well, you can look at the gauge first thing in the morning and write that down or know what it is and actually report that data later. So at noon you could say, hey, at 7 a.m. I looked at my gauge and this is what it was. So you can report anytime, but we ask that you look at your gauge and take your measurement first thing in the morning. If you do not take it first thing in the morning, that's still okay. You can still record and report your data anytime. It just will not end up on the map if it's not before 9:30 a.m. So, how do we measure more than an inch? I showed you how the rain gauge holds 1 inch and then poured into the inner tube, it fills it all the way to the top. Well, after that, it just starts to overflow. And so you can actually see here what we're doing is we take the first inch and we pour it out, and you want to write it down so you do not forget. And then you can continue using the funnel and pouring the additional amounts back into the inner tube. And you keep on doing that and keep on writing it down until you have your full measurement. It's pretty rare that we get more than an inch here in Colorado, but it can happen, and it's pretty exciting when it does. So, data entry. what I recommend is, and not necessarily required, but the first time you log in, you can tell the computer to remember your password, and then it instantly defaults to the data entry page. This is the first page you would see after logging in. And for me, I personally save this page to my bookmarks. That way, when I go to CoCoRaHS, it instantly has me logged in and instantly goes to the data entry page. And you can also see it defaults to 0. So here, yesterday it didn't rain. This morning I woke up, I went to my bookmark, and I hit submit. It took me all about 2 seconds, and now I've helped out scientists all over the country. Very easy to do. So reporting 0 is just a couple of seconds and really helps out. You can enter back data if you want. If you record it for a whole week but don't enter it all at once, you can always toggle the date, adjust the time, and submit how much rain you found that morning in your gauge. So entering back data is not a problem. Once you've submitted your data, you can also look at you can actually look at your reports. You can look at them through a list here. And you also, I wanted to point out, you have other reports that you can make, and I'll briefly mention them, but basically you can enter hail reports, and you can enter significant weather reports, and multi-day accumulation, which for teachers I would point out, because on Monday you can go to this data page here, multi-day accumulation, and when you click on that, you can fill in the dates that say, this is what I found in my gauge on Monday morning after the entire weekend. Observation notes, we really encourage teachers to have their students write in some notes here. Have them do a little bit of observing when they go out to check the rain gauge. Have them identify some clouds. If you have another weather station, they can type in the temperature, they can type in what they observe. It's a sunny day, it's really warm, whatever they want to put in here. It is available to the public, so we want to, of course, keep it clean, but we really encourage this, and this is good too, to encourage the kids to write in complete sentences and take observations. So you can certainly use this to however you want. Okay, so very briefly, I'm going to talk about hail and then snow, but those are side projects of CoCoRaHS. And again, as a teacher, if you are just reporting your rainfall data, that's quite all right. But hail, we use these pieces of styrofoam covered with tinfoil, and you can see here the result of a pretty large hailstones hitting this. And these get mailed into our office and analyzed by graduate students, and they can look at the different numbers of hailstones. You look at the different sizes. You can even look at the angle of impact. If they were coming in at a sideways angle, you can see that in here. This really quick is my colleague who got to hold the largest hailstone of all time. This fell in South Dakota, I believe last summer, maybe 2 summers ago now. But you can see it was almost the size of a volleyball. So that is the largest hailstone to ever be recorded to land in the United States. So the reporting of hail, though, you don't necessarily need a hail pad. You can, if you're at school and it's hailing, you can log into the CoCoRaHS website and you can click on Hail Report and you can fill in the information and you can explain the time, the color of the hail, the size, and it's a real-time report, so it actually instantly goes right to the National Weather Service and they get to see it right away. And sometimes they'll even issue a warnings downstream from you if it's needed. So CoCoRaHS reports have actually can actually save lives. Measuring snow. What I have to say about measuring snow is that it's a little bit trickier, and the main reason why is the wind. You can see here there was not any wind at all, and so this is a real nice snowstorm here with no wind. But most of the time you get wind involved and you end up with drifts, and so the bottom line with snow is that we have more training slides available on our website, which I would encourage you to look at. We have videos, we have more instructions when it comes to measuring snow. But very briefly, the most important thing, of course, we do measure the depth of the snow, but more importantly, scientists want to know the water content of the snow. So what we do is we turn the gauge upside down and you take a core sample of the snow, and you can use a fly swatter or a spatula or something and slide it underneath and collect a core sample. And then after that, you would melt that snow and measure the water that is inside that snow. So it's a little bit easier to show in person, and again, we're just keeping it simple during this webinar here, but I wanted you to know that these are the ways that we do measure our snow. So again, we've got a slideshow on our website, and very briefly I will go back to our website and show you that you've got things to know about rain, hail, and snow. And you can, and also training slideshows. If you click on training slideshows, here is the snow measuring slideshow that you can go to. So I've just updated our map, and now we're over 6,500 measurements for the morning. Somebody, you can see, reported 11 inches, and that was probably a mistake. So don't worry, mistakes do happen, and we have a quality control team that may even email you and say, hey, did you really have 7 inches this morning, or was it just 7 o'clock in the morning and you had 0? So mistakes do happen, not to worry. If you do get contacted by our team, don't be offended. You should actually be flattered that we're looking at your data. So as teachers, you all, I'm sure, know how these can fit, how participating in CoCoRaHS can fit into your standards, using a scientific instrument, and then of course in any weather unit we're talking about the processes of the environment of our atmosphere. But besides science, we can get into math, you can get into geography. We actually have had some art and music classes that have done stuff with CoCoRaHS, you know, singing little water cycle songs and writing poems and things like that. So the sky is the limit is basically the key word there. So we're near the end here. What else? Well, besides contributing to science, you do have opportunities for your class to meet and ask questions of scientists. My boss is the state climatologist. His name is Nolan Buskin, and either he or I are available to answer questions about weather and climate. We can also do classroom visits. We can do webinars such as this. We can do Skype type of video chat sessions as well. You can, of course, meet new friends through the social networking. We've got Facebook and Twitter, and we've got a YouTube channel that I really recommend you check out. And it's just fun. It's really neat to be a part of a bigger network where you can contribute data and help out scientists and be a part of something bigger. I really do want to briefly just show you the links to Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you go to our YouTube channel, I really recommend the featured video here is only 2 minutes and 40 seconds long, and it's a quick little cartoon that explains all about our program. And so it's really fun, and so I recommend you check that out as well. Okay, so we're just about near the end here, and I'll open things up for questions in just a second, but I want to show you one of the things that you may have seen at a water festival in the last year, but we have a game where kids get to use squirt guns that go into these little targets that filter down into separate rain gauges, and it's a race to see who can fill up their rain gauge the most. And after about 10 seconds, we pull the rain gauges up, and we have the students read how much is in their gauges, and they walk away thinking that they just got to have some fun shooting a squirt gun, and we know that they walked away learning how to read a rain gauge. So it's kind of I say we're fooling them into reading a rain gauge, but it's pretty neat because now they know, and when they see it at your school, they'll know how to read it. So how can you get involved? Like I mentioned, signing up on our website. I'm going to get everyone a free rain gauge for attending this webinar. I encourage you to check out the slideshows, but what you've experienced today is good enough to get you started in reporting data at your school. Setting up the gauge, I know that can sometimes be an issue, getting permission from the principal, but if you have any questions about that, contact me and I can try to help you, possibly even send out a volunteer from in your area that can help install the gauge at your school. My contact information is right here, education@CoCoRaHS.org, and you can email me at any time. In fact, what I'd like you to do is send me an email after this webinar is over with, and what I'd like you to do is in the email explain that you just attended the webinar and you'd like the gauge sent to such and such location, and you can give us your address that you prefer us to mail the gauge to you. So again, send an email to education@CoCoRaHS.org and give us your address and explain that you just attended the webinar, and we will mail you the gauge. So I think that is going to cover it. Our last little saying that we like to say is that we are cuckoo for CoCoRaHS. And again, I hope that you get involved with this, and I hope you ask me questions. And depending on your location and the time of year, I would love to get invited to come out and do a presentation to your school. So if anyone has any questions at this point, you can use your control panel that's on the side and use the little red arrow to expand, and you can type in a question. The presentation is over at this point, so you're welcome to go and send me an email to education@CoCoRaHS.org with your address. But otherwise, please type in a question, and I'm happy to stick around for a bit and answer. And I'm not seeing any questions coming in yet. Somebody may be typing. I'll give it about 30 more seconds here. And I do see somebody has raised their hand, so they're probably typing in a question right now. So give us 1 second here, and as soon as the question comes in, okay. So the question is, are there any particular grade levels that you think this is more effective with? Well, that is a great question, and really the neat thing is that it really could be for just about any grade level. I would say from 2nd and 3rd grade and above. First graders can certainly be involved with going out to the gauge and looking at it and maybe counting the tick marks. But we would want somebody, with a little bit older as far as actually entering the data. But we do have students out there, 3rd grade and above, that are totally okay with entering data. So any class that has a weather unit is certainly very applicable to this. But as we get to middle school and high school, well, now we can get into things like data analysis, and where we've got lesson plans that are in design and should be released here within the next few weeks that involve going into our database, getting data, and doing a little bit of analysis, whether it's just very minor analysis and looking at monthly data and then figuring out how much they got for the whole month or what was the average, to actually even looking at comparing local data to long-term climate data, and that can get involved with putting data into Excel and graphing it, etc. So we do have lesson plans for all ages, for elementary, middle, and high school, and those are coming. So great, and I will be all of the teachers here will certainly get added to our master spreadsheet that shows that you've showed some interest, and I'll be keeping folks updated. When we add lesson plans to the website, I'll give you links to where the lesson plans are, and we'll be updating everyone during Rain Gauge Week, which is September 5th through 11th, where we're wanting everyone to report some data throughout that time period, and we'll send out some emails during that period too to give some shout outs to different schools for participating. So if nobody else has any questions, I haven't seen any further ones come in, so that's fine. But again, in the end, if you can send me an email to education@CoCoRaHS.org explaining that you just attended the webinar and that you'd like a rain gauge sent to your address, and then give us your address, we'll go from there. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And if nobody has any further questions, you're free to log off from the webinar. And if you do have a question, I'll still stick around a little bit until everyone's logged off. So thank you very much, everyone. And one more question came in, if this presentation will be available on the website. And the answer is yes. Since I recorded this presentation, it's actually going to end up on our YouTube channel. So going to our website and clicking on YouTube, and I'm clicking on that here, and I'll show you where it's going to live. Very good question. Thank you. Let's see if I can get to it here. So on our YouTube, it's going to be in training is exactly where it's going to be. So on our YouTube channel, you'll see training, and when you click on that, there will be, and you can see a couple other training sessions we've held that were over an hour long. This one was about 30 minutes, but it's going to live right here. So I hope that helps. Thanks so much. And at this point, I see one person left. Mary Carney, you're the only one left, and so I can actually unmute you if you happen to have a microphone. I don't know if you have a question or if you're trying to type anything in, but I've unmuted you. If you happen to have a microphone and have any questions, I'm here to answer them. And you might not even have a microphone, so that's not a problem. But if you use your arrow that's on the right-hand side, it should open up a little tab, and you can ask a question. And if not, Mary, you're welcome to send me an email to education@CoCoRaHS.org, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.